Hey, what's up? It's Jake from Nimbus DevOps, taking a break from catching up on Jessica Jones to talk to you about reading and writing to a file. So now that you know how to open a file, let's look at a couple different ways in which you can read and write to it. So this is our open, so we'll save that, and I'm going to look at printfile.py, and we're going to write a script to print to a file. So we'll use the same approach. We'll say with open and then print underscore example dot txt. We want to write as fw, and then we're just going to print, hey, I am printing into a file. And then you have to pass the file, and we're just going to say file equals fw. Okay, so the first approach uses the print function, which we've done plenty of times. After obtaining a file object, this time specifying that we intend to write to it, we can tell the call to print to direct its output to the file instead of the standard output stream as it normally does. So normally you would say print whatever and it would just print out to the console, right? So in here, instead of printing it out the standard output in the console, we're going to print it to a file. So what happens if we run this? Let's do Python print file, and nothing happens. And then you see a file is created. And in this file it says, hey, I am printing into a file. So now if you're following along, you've just used Python to create and print it to a file, which is pretty cool. So this code has the effect of creating the print example text file, which we saw, if it doesn't exist, or truncating it in the case if it writes the line, hey, I'm printing to a file, it'll just truncate it. So that's nice and easy, but what do we do when we want to write to a file with a little bit more of a common approach? Because this isn't typically what you do. So let's look at a read-write example, read-write.py, and we'll say with open, and then let's do our fear file, fear.txt, as f, and we'll say lines equal, and let's create a sequence, line.strip for line in f, and then after that we'll say with open fear underscore copy.txt, write as fw, fw.write, and then we'll just pass carriage return dot join lines like that. So in this example, we first open fear.txt, collect its content into a list line by line. And this time we're calling a different method, which is actually this should be rstrip, um, to make sure we only strip the white space on the right hand side of every line. So in the second part of the snippet, we create a new file, fear underscore copy.txt, and we write to it all the lines from the original file, joined by a new line with the carriage returns \n. Python is pretty gracious and works by default with universal new lines, which means that even though the original file might have a new line that is different to /n, it will be translated automatically for us before the line is returned. That behavior is customizable, but normally it's exactly what you want. So think of what might be missing in this copy. Well, let's run it and then let's take a look. So I see it makes a copy of fear copy and it looks exactly the same. So just think about it and you can play with it a little bit. And I'm going to move on to another concept. So this next concept is reading and writing in binary mode. So when you open a file, passing in the options or omitting it, right, as default, you're opening the file in text mode. That's the T mode, right, as the argument. That means that the content of the file is treated and interpreted as text. If you wish to write bytes to a file, you can open it in binary mode. It's a common requirement when you deal with files that don't just contain raw text, such as images, audio, video, and really any other proprietary format. So in order to handle files in binary mode, you have to specify the B flag when opening them. So if I were to, let's make another one. Let's make a read underscore write underscore bin.py file. And I will say with open, and let's grab example.bin. So that's a binary file. WB, so write binary as FW. And we're just going to FW write and then use B for the binary string. This is binary data, just like that. And then under here, I can say with open example.bin read binary as f print f.read, and that should print out your binary data. So in this example, we're still using text as binary data for simplicity, but it could be really anything you wanted. It just treated as binary. The fact that you get the B here just treats it as the binary. So what happens if we run this? So Python read write bin.py. This is binary data, and we see a example.bin, and this is actually written in binary. And my marketplace is already asking me if I want bin extensions. So then the last thing I'll go over is protecting against overwriting of an existing file. And there may be cases where you want to do that. So let's make a file called write not exists.py, and we'll say with open write underscore x.txt, comma, and then let's do x as fw, and that'll succeed. And we'll say fw.write, and we'll just type writing line 1. And then under that, with open write underscore x.txt, and we will do in x mode as fw, and fw.write, and then we'll say writing line 2. So what's the difference? Well, see if you can figure this out. So if you run this, you're going to see that you'll find a file called write underscore x.txt in the directory, and it should have one line of text saying writing line 1. The second part will fail to execute, and that's because the output we get on our console, you'll see that the file already exists. And so yes, we're writing the same thing, but we're doing it with this X. So once the file exists, it'll succeed in the lines 1 and 2 because the file does not exist, and then it will fail on lines 4 and 5 because the line does in fact exist. So, or the file does exist. So let's do write underscore not, and we get an error. File exists, but it did create it, and it created it and wrote the line 1, which is exactly what we thought it was going to do. So there's some reading and writing things and a couple different examples of things you can do. And in the next section, we're going to start looking at checking for file directory existence and manipulating files and things like that. So hang around and you might learn something.